There comes a moment when you have to ask yourself a very honest question. Am I building a relationship with her, or am I constantly trying to earn her approval? Because those two things may look similar from the outside, but emotionally they are completely different. When you genuinely like someone, it's natural to want their attention. You want them to notice you. You want them to respond to your messages, appreciate your efforts, and enjoy being around you. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when her reaction becomes the measurement of your worth. If she replies quickly, you feel confident. If she takes longer, you start questioning yourself. If she compliments you, you feel valuable. If she seems distant, suddenly you wonder whether something is wrong with you. That is when you're no longer simply interested in her. You're depending on her behavior to tell you how you should feel about yourself. And that's a dangerous place to build any relationship. Real confidence begins when you understand that someone's attention can be enjoyable without becoming necessary for your self-worth. Think about the difference between a man who says, I hope she chooses me because I don't know what I'll do without her, and a man who says, I genuinely enjoy having her in my life, but I still know who I am without her. The second man isn't pretending not to care. He cares. He simply doesn't abandon himself to be loved. And that's a powerful distinction. You can appreciate her without constantly chasing her approval. You can compliment her without needing a compliment in return. You can make an effort without keeping score. You can show interest without turning every interaction into a test of whether she likes you enough. Because when you stop performing for approval, something changes inside you. You become calmer. You listen more carefully. You stop overanalyzing every message. You stop trying to say the perfect thing. You stop changing your personality just to keep someone interested. And people can feel that difference. Not because you're using some secret psychological trick, but because you're finally interacting from a place of security instead of fear. Your life should not become smaller simply because someone entered it. Keep your friendships. Keep learning. Keep working toward meaningful goals. Spend time doing things that make you feel fulfilled. Maintain the interest that existed before the relationship appeared. This isn't about pretending to be busy so she becomes curious. It's not about ignoring her. It's not about responding late on purpose. And it certainly isn't about making her jealous. Those are games, and games may create temporary reactions, but they don't create healthy connection. Instead, build a life that genuinely matters to you. When you have responsibilities, handle them. When your friends need you, be present. When you have goals, pursue them. When you have something you're passionate about, give it your attention. And when you're with her, actually be with her. That's what balance looks like. You don't need to prove that you're independent by becoming emotionally cold. Independence isn't about withholding affection. It's about being able to give affection freely without feeling that you must receive something immediately in return. There's also something deeply attractive about a person who knows their boundaries. If she disagrees with you, you don't automatically change your opinion just to keep her happy. If she needs space, you don't panic. If she doesn't like something about you, you don't immediately reshape yourself to become someone else. You can listen, you can reflect, you can compromise when compromise is healthy, but you don't erase yourself. Because the goal isn't to become someone she is afraid to lose. The goal is to become someone you are proud to be. And ironically, that can change how another person experiences you. When someone sees that you have your own identity, your own direction, your own relationships, and your own standards, they understand that your connection with them is a choice, not a desperate need. You are there because you want to be there. You care because you genuinely care. You stay because the relationship adds something meaningful to your life. That's much stronger than constantly asking, do you still like me? And here's the relationship lesson I want you to remember. Never confuse being needed with being valued. Someone can need your attention and still not respect you. Someone can constantly seek your presence and still not treat you well. What you want is something deeper: mutual appreciation, mutual effort, trust, respect, and genuine choice. So stop measuring your worth through someone else's reactions. Walk into relationships knowing that you have value before anyone notices it. Give love without abandoning yourself. Care deeply without losing your center, and let your confidence come from who you are, not from whether someone chooses to validate you. When you stop chasing approval, you finally give people the opportunity to appreciate the real you. There is a difference between being available for someone and making yourself available every second just to keep their attention. And if you understand that difference, you begin to understand something important about healthy attraction. When you genuinely care about a woman, you may want to talk to her all the time. You may want to know what she's doing, how her day went, what she's thinking, and whether she's thinking about you. That's completely natural. But here's where you have to be careful. If your entire schedule changes the moment she appears, if you immediately drop everything whenever she contacts you, or if you feel anxious whenever you aren't talking, you may slowly be communicating something you never intended to communicate. My life revolves around your attention. And that's not confidence. Confidence doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means caring without abandoning yourself. Think about your own life. Think about the kind of person people naturally respect. It's rarely the person who spends all day trying to prove how important they are. It's usually the person who has direction, purpose, friendships, interests, and a life that doesn't disappear the moment someone else walks into it. And that's where this next lesson becomes important. If you want someone to recognize your value, don't spend all your energy trying to convince them that you're valuable. Build a life that genuinely has value to you. Not for her, not to make her jealous, not to make her wonder where you are, for you. Because there is a major difference between creating a fulfilling life and performing independence as a psychological strategy. If you're pretending to be busy because you want her to chase you, you're still making your life revolve around her reaction. You're just doing it in reverse. Real independence doesn't ask, will this make her miss me? Real independence asks, is this helping me become the person I want to become? That's a completely different mindset. Think about your goals. Maybe there's something you've wanted to learn. Maybe there's a skill you've been putting off. Maybe you want to improve your education, work towards something meaningful, spend more time with good friends, or simply become more disciplined with your time. Give those things your attention. When you develop yourself, you aren't trying to become more attractive as a performance. You're creating substance in your own life. And substance changes the way you show up in relationships. You have more to talk about because you're experiencing life. You have more confidence because you're making progress. You have stories because you're doing things. You have perspective because you're learning. You have emotional stability because your entire sense of purpose isn't dependent on one person's attention. That's powerful. Imagine two people entering a relationship. One person expects the relationship to become their entire world. The other person sees the relationship as an important part of an already meaningful life. The second person can love deeply without becoming completely dependent. They can miss their partner without feeling lost. They can enjoy time together and still enjoy time apart. They can support their partner while continuing to pursue their own goals. That balance creates breathing room. And healthy relationships need breathing room. You don't have to be constantly together to prove that you care. In fact, sometimes having separate interests makes the time you spend together more meaningful. You come back with something to share. You have experiences to discuss. You have new ideas. You have things you're excited about. And that keeps the relationship from becoming repetitive or emotionally suffocating. But there's another side to this lesson that matters even more. Your friendships matter. Don't abandon the people who supported you simply because you're interested in someone romantically. Stay connected to good friends. Make time for people who bring positivity into your life. Listen to them. Laugh with them. Be present. A healthy relationship shouldn't require you to erase your social world. And the same principle applies to your interests. If you love reading, keep reading. If you enjoy sports, keep enjoying them. If you have creative interests, keep creating. If you have goals that excite you, keep pursuing them. The person who is right for you shouldn't need you to become less of yourself in order to love you. And here's something important. Don't use your life as a weapon. Don't tell her about every achievement just to make her feel like she's missing out. Don't post things specifically to provoke a reaction. Don't deliberately disappear and then return expecting her to chase you. Don't create jealousy and call it attraction. That's not emotional strength. That's manipulation. If your life is genuinely fulfilling, you won't need to advertise it every 5 minutes. Your confidence will naturally show up in the way you speak, the way you make decisions, and the way you treat people. You won't need to announce, I'm a valuable man. You'll simply live like someone who respects himself. And that creates a very different kind of attraction, because when someone sees that you have a life you're proud of, they understand that your relationship with them is based on choice rather than desperation. You're not saying complete me, you're saying I already have a life I value and I'd love for you to be part of it. That is a much healthier invitation. And if she chooses to be part of that life, appreciate her, make room for her, listen to her, support her goals too. Because this isn't supposed to become a one-sided philosophy where only you have a life outside the relationship. She deserves her own goals, friendships, interests, and independence as well. The strongest relationships aren't built by two people becoming one person. They're built by two complete individuals choosing to walk together. So if you want someone to recognize what they could lose, don't spend your days trying to make them afraid. Build something worth protecting. Build your character. Build your friendships. Build your purpose. Build your confidence. Build a life you genuinely enjoy living. And then let your relationship become an addition to that life, not the replacement for it. When you build a life you love, you no longer need to convince anyone of your value. There is something you have to understand about self-respect. It isn't loud. You don't have to threaten someone with leaving. You don't have to announce your standards every 5 minutes. You don't have to become cold, distant, or aggressive to prove that you won't tolerate disrespect. Sometimes self-respect is simply being clear about what you will accept and then having the courage to act consistently with that decision. Because here's what happens when you constantly accept behavior that hurts you. At first, you tell yourself, it's not a big deal. Then it happens again. You make another excuse, then another. And eventually, you're no longer dealing with one uncomfortable moment. You're creating a pattern where the other person learns that your boundaries don't really mean anything. That's why boundaries matter. A boundary isn't a punishment. A boundary isn't a threat. And a boundary certainly isn't a trick designed to make someone afraid of losing you. A boundary is simply a clear understanding of what you need in order to participate in a healthy relationship. Maybe you don't want to be spoken to disrespectfully. Maybe you don't want constant dishonesty. Maybe you don't want someone repeatedly canceling plans without communicating. Maybe you need mutual effort instead of always being the person initiating every conversation. Those are reasonable things to care about. But there's an important difference between saying, I need mutual respect, and saying, if you don't do exactly what I want, I'm going to disappear, so you panic. One comes from self-respect. The other comes from control. And if you're serious about building a strong relationship, you have to know the difference. When someone crosses a boundary, your first response doesn't need to be dramatic. You can communicate. You can say calmly, I don't feel comfortable with the way we're communicating right now. You can explain what you need. You can listen to her perspective. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe there is something you didn't know. Maybe both of you need to adjust something. Healthy communication gives people an opportunity to understand each other. But what happens if the same disrespect continues? That's where your actions have to match your words. You cannot repeatedly say, this isn't okay with me, while continuing to participate in exactly the same situation without addressing it. Eventually, your words lose their meaning. And this is where walking away can become an act of self-respect. Not walking away to make her chase you. Not walking away so she becomes frightened. Not walking away and waiting for a dramatic apology. Walking away because you've recognized that a particular situation isn't healthy for you anymore. That's a completely different mindset. You're not saying, I'm leaving so you'll finally understand my value. You're saying, I've explained what I need and I have to respect myself enough to make a decision based on what is actually happening. That's emotional maturity. And here's something people often forget. Boundaries apply to everyone. If you expect honesty from her, you should practice honesty yourself. If you expect respect, give respect. If you want her to communicate when something is wrong, be willing to communicate too. If you want her to respect your space, respect hers. A boundary is not a special set of rules that only protects you. It's part of creating mutual respect. And this is where relationships become much healthier. You stop trying to control another person's behavior and start taking responsibility for your own choices. You cannot force someone to respect you. You can communicate what respect means to you. You can observe whether their actions match their words. And you can decide what you are willing to remain part of. That's your power. You don't need to chase someone who repeatedly shows you that they don't want to meet you halfway. You don't need to beg for basic consideration. You don't need to compete for someone's attention. And you don't need to convince someone to value you. At the same time, don't become so obsessed with having standards that every little disagreement becomes a reason to leave. People make mistakes. People misunderstand each other. People have bad days. Relationships require patience and forgiveness. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is a healthy pattern. Look at what happens consistently. Does she listen when you express something important? Does she take responsibility when she makes a mistake? Does she respect your boundaries even when she disagrees with them? Does she make an effort to repair problems? And are you doing the same for her? Those questions matter far more than trying to create a fear of loss, because when two people know that the relationship is built on mutual respect, neither person has to manipulate the other into staying. They stay because they want to. And if one person repeatedly chooses behavior that damages the relationship, the other person has the right to reconsider whether continuing is healthy. That isn't a game. That's reality. So don't build your confidence around making someone afraid to lose you. Build your confidence around knowing that you won't lose yourself just to keep someone else. Stand firmly, speak calmly, love genuinely, and respect yourself enough to leave situations that consistently violate what you know you need. The strongest boundary is the one you are willing to honor yourself. There is a difference between making someone feel appreciated and making someone responsible for your happiness. And if you understand that difference, you can change the entire emotional quality of a relationship. When you genuinely care about a woman, you should never be afraid to show it. Some people become so focused on appearing confident that they start believing they must hide every emotion. They think compliments make them weak. They think showing appreciation means they are chasing. They think being affectionate gives the other person too much power. That's not confidence. Confidence isn't pretending you don't care. Confidence is caring without losing yourself. If you appreciate something about her, tell her. If you admire the way she handles a difficult situation, acknowledge it. If she remembers something important to you, let her know that it mattered. If you enjoy spending time with her, you don't have to pretend otherwise. People want to feel seen. And sometimes a simple, sincere expression of appreciation can mean more than an elaborate gesture. But here's where the balance becomes important. Appreciation says, I value you. Dependence says, I need you to constantly prove that you value me. Those are completely different messages. Imagine telling someone, I really appreciate how thoughtful you are. That's appreciation. But if you compliment her and then immediately expect her to respond with the same level of affection, you're turning appreciation into a transaction. You gave something, so now you expect something back. That's where emotional pressure begins. Healthy connection doesn't work like a scoreboard. You shouldn't be keeping track of how many compliments you gave versus how many you received. You shouldn't count how quickly she responded compared with how quickly you responded. You shouldn't calculate who initiated the last conversation. Of course, mutual effort matters. A relationship can't be healthy if one person is always giving while the other person contributes almost nothing. But mutual effort should be understood through patterns, not through obsessive scorekeeping. And this is where genuine appreciation becomes powerful. Notice the little things. Maybe she remembers a detail you mentioned weeks ago. Maybe she encourages you when you're working towards something important. Maybe she checks on you after you've had a difficult day. Maybe she makes time for a conversation when she could have easily ignored you. Don't take those things for granted. Say thank you. Let her know you noticed. Because being appreciated can make people feel emotionally safe. And emotional safety creates a completely different kind of connection than manipulation ever could. You don't need to make someone afraid that they'll lose you. You want them to feel that being around you is meaningful. There is a huge difference. Fear says, if you don't hold on to me, something bad will happen. Appreciation says, I value what we have and I don't take it for granted. One creates anxiety, the other creates warmth. And if you want a relationship that lasts, warmth is far more valuable. But remember, appreciation should go both ways. You deserve to feel valued too. Don't become the person who constantly pours affection into someone who rarely gives anything back. Don't convince yourself that endless patience will eventually make someone appreciate you. Healthy relationships require reciprocity. You should be able to express your feelings without being embarrassed for having them. You should be able to receive care without questioning whether you deserve it. You should be able to give affection without feeling like you're losing power. And you should be able to recognize when the relationship is becoming one-sided. This is especially important because some people confuse emotional distance with strength. They think if I never tell her I care, she'll wonder what I'm thinking. Maybe she will. But uncertainty isn't the foundation you want. You don't want someone constantly wondering whether you care. You want communication. You want honesty. You want two people who can express themselves without playing emotional games. So don't be afraid to tell someone when they matter to you. Just don't make their response responsible for your emotional stability. You can say, I appreciate you, without needing her to say it back immediately. You can say, I enjoyed spending time with you, without demanding reassurance. You can care deeply and still continue living your own life. That is emotional strength. And there's something else that happens when you practice genuine appreciation. You begin paying attention to character instead of simply chasing attention. You notice how she treats people. You notice whether she keeps her word. You notice how she communicates when there's a disagreement. You notice whether she supports your growth. You notice whether she respects your boundaries. And she gets the opportunity to notice those things about you too. That's how attraction becomes deeper. Not through constant emotional tension, not through jealousy, not through making someone afraid, through familiarity, trust, respect, laughter, shared experiences, and genuine appreciation. So if you care about someone, don't make yourself cold just to appear valuable. Don't hide every feeling because you're afraid that showing affection will make you look weak. And don't pour affection into someone simply because you're terrified they'll leave. Give appreciation freely. Receive it gracefully. Watch for mutual effort. And always remember that the goal isn't to make someone afraid of losing you. The goal is to create a relationship where both people genuinely recognize what they have. When someone feels genuinely valued, they don't need to be manipulated into staying. And now we come to the part that matters more than every psychological technique, every attraction strategy, and every attempt to understand what someone might be feeling. You have to let her choose you. That may sound simple, but emotionally, it's one of the hardest lessons to accept. When you really like someone, you naturally want certainty. You want to know where you stand. You want to know whether she cares as much as you do. You want reassurance that she isn't going anywhere. But sometimes in the desire to get that reassurance, people start trying to control the outcome. They become overly available. They chase. They constantly check for signs. They create jealousy. They withdraw just to see whether the other person follows. And eventually the relationship becomes less about connection and more about trying to control someone's emotions. That's not what you want. You don't want a woman to stay because she's afraid of losing you. You want her to stay because she genuinely wants the relationship. There is a huge difference between those two things. Fear can make someone react. Choice creates commitment. And if you're looking for something meaningful, you want choice. Think about the people you genuinely value in your own life. You don't want them around because they are trapped. You want them around because they enjoy your company, respect you, trust you, and freely choose to maintain the relationship. Romantic relationships deserve the same freedom. That means you have to give someone room to reveal their intentions through their actions. Don't constantly chase explanations. Don't force conversations every time she needs a little space. Don't turn every change in her mood into an emergency. Give the relationship enough breathing room for both people to show what they actually want. If she cares, you'll see effort. If she enjoys your company, she'll make time. If she values the connection, she'll contribute to it. If something is bothering her, healthy communication gives her an opportunity to express it. And if she doesn't want the same relationship you want, as painful as that realization might be, you deserve to know that too. Because knowing the truth is healthier than living inside a fantasy. You cannot force mutual attraction. You cannot negotiate someone into loving you. You cannot manipulate someone into becoming emotionally invested. And you shouldn't have to. The right relationship isn't built around constantly convincing someone to stay. It's built around two people repeatedly choosing each other. That's why your focus should shift from, how do I make her afraid to lose me? To a much stronger question, how do I become the kind of person who lives with enough self-respect that I can accept whatever the truth is? If she chooses you, appreciate it. If she needs something different, listen. If there is a misunderstanding, communicate. If the relationship needs work, make an effort. But don't abandon yourself trying to control her decision. You can control your character. You can control how you communicate. You can control whether you show respect. You can control whether you keep your promises. You can control whether you maintain your boundaries. You can control whether you continue growing. But you cannot control another person's heart. And accepting that doesn't make you powerless. It makes you emotionally free. Because when you stop trying to control someone else's feelings, you can finally focus on building something real. You become more present. You listen instead of analyzing. You communicate instead of manipulating. You appreciate instead of taking things for granted. You notice her effort instead of constantly demanding proof. And you begin to understand that a relationship isn't a competition where one person has to hold more power than the other. It's a partnership. There will be moments when you disagree. There will be moments when one person needs space. There will be moments when life becomes stressful and communication isn't perfect. That doesn't automatically mean the connection is disappearing. What matters is what happens consistently. Do both people return to the conversation? Do both people try to understand each other? Do both people take responsibility? Do both people respect one another? Do both people still make an effort? Those are the questions that reveal the strength of a relationship. And if you ever reach a point where you're constantly trying to make someone fear losing you, pause. Ask yourself why. Are you afraid she doesn't value you? Are you afraid she'll leave? Are you looking for reassurance? Are you trying to regain control because you feel uncertain? Be honest with yourself. Sometimes the person you're trying hardest to keep is not the person you actually need to convince. Sometimes what you really need is confidence in your own ability to handle the outcome. If she stays, you can build together. If she communicates her concerns, you can listen. If she chooses the relationship, you can appreciate that choice. And if she ultimately chooses another path, you can grieve the disappointment without destroying your sense of self. That's strength. Not making someone afraid, not creating emotional pressure, not pretending you don't care. Real strength is being able to love someone while still respecting their freedom and your own. So don't become obsessed with being impossible to lose. Become someone who is honest, grounded, purposeful, respectful, emotionally mature, and genuinely enjoyable to be around. Then let the relationship reveal itself. Because the most meaningful kind of attraction isn't built on fear. It's built on choice. And when she chooses you freely, you know the connection is real.